The talk is about emotional leadership and the power of human connection, and a fair warning, the talk will very likely be emotional. So I want to start off with a personal story. I'm not sure how many people in my life know about this story. Maybe it's my best friend Mitch, and that's about it. And so I joined AIESEC in 2006, 2007. In 2008, I went to Tanzania on an internship. And the internship I had was at 23 years old, running a startup economic development consulting firm, working with the Danish embassy, working with the Swedish embassy, the US embassy. It was unbelievable. I lived in the house with the MC in Tanzania, so I finally started to understand what AIESEC was all about. And then I started dating, which many of you in this room know, and I'm nervous to say, but her name is, just to bring more humanity to the story. And I dated for a little bit, and unfortunately, due to poor health and many other reasons, I left Tanzania to go back to the US. I was running out of money, I was having trouble with my feet and personal health, and I had malaria a few times. And so I went back to the US, and luckily I came to visit because she was going to a winter national conference, I believe, in Atlanta, Georgia, for the AIESEC US. And I went down. We had a great time at the conference. Afterwards, we did a road trip all the way back up to Michigan, where I'm originally from. She met my parents and all that fun stuff, right? And then she went back home, and shortly after she went back home, I heard through the grapevine what I thought was that she had cheated on me. And I got furious. Here I am, back home, away from everything that brought so much love and energy to my life in Tanzania, back home, speaking with a foreign accent, not being able to describe this AIESEC experience to anyone, and now the one woman who was connected to me deeply is out of my life. I was furious. And so when I heard that she was going to be coming to Toronto for, I believe, a conference or something, I had this idea, and the idea, a bit ashamed to admit, was that she was going to come, I was going to meet her in Toronto, and I was going to go see her. I would go up to the hotel room, I would go down, I would say, I'll be right back. I was going to go downstairs, and I was going to drive 4 hours back home without saying a word. And I was talking with my best friend Mitch about this, and Mitch told me to take the higher path, to be the better man, better human. And so I didn't do it. I spoke with her about what I believed were the allegations. We got into a big fight, and yeah. And then, you know, in the next couple months, I was working in consulting in Michigan, and like I said, people didn't understand my accent. I couldn't really describe the music that I liked because everyone else was listening to different music than what I was listening to. My dance style changed. I moved my hips a lot more. I do this, you know. Like again, the whole, you know, are you gay? That came up a lot because I was moving my hips in the U.S. And so I realized when I was working in an organization, we had one project. We were working with art museums across the U.S. And we had a shared vision workshop. It was all about innovation and organizational change. And so we were trying to help them come up with a new business model because it was falling apart as older families stopped donating money and younger families didn't even pay to go, and the youngest families didn't even want to go. And a woman in the room, maybe in her 40s, said, you know, the problem is art museums are elitist. And me being the 33-year-old in the room, sorry, at the time I was much younger, in the room I was like, yeah. And then I believe it was an 80-year-old woman or something stood up and she goes, art museums are not elitist. And then my friend who was facilitating the conversation shifted the conversation. And I just sat there, no, this is the topic. We need to talk about this because this is the problem. Art museums are stodgy, sterile, elite. This is why I don't want to go. This is why I don't want to pay. You're talking about art, which is some of the most, like the deepest emotional expression we've had as a species, and it feels cold. So you combine that with the pain that I was feeling from the breakup, and to be honest, the loneliness that I was feeling from not feeling connected to anyone. I didn't think my dad would ever understand who I was and what I was about. He doesn't know what it's like to be in Tanzania. He doesn't know what it's like to date a woman from Kenya. He doesn't know what it's like to try to learn another language. And then I thought, you know what, but I don't know what it's like to work 45 years at the same company. I don't know what it's like to be married for probably 40 years at the time. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to lose my father when I'm a teenager. And then it hit me. It said, but I know what it feels like to feel sad. He knows what it's like to be sad. I know what it's like to be angry. He knows what it's like to be angry. I know what it's like to be so scared that I'm about to lose my life. I'm sure he knows the same feeling. I can connect with my father along emotional lines. And I quit consulting, so I shifted and I moved out to Colorado, and for the last 6 years, I've been building tools to help me get better at expressing and dealing with my emotions. And it's been a rough ride. But you know what I've realized is that I'm not the only one who's on this rough ride. If you look at the state of the world these days, and I'm sure many of you are familiar, there's a lot of uncertainty. Phones are moving, or have increased the rate of surprise and anger and frustration and political decisions and change and identity change in our lives. And often in these times, we look to leaders for an answer. At the same time, being a leader seems to be dramatically more difficult these days, because every decision you make, everything you say is being scrutinized 24/7 on various social media platforms all around the world in different languages. And it's not just what you say or what you do or how you look or what you stand for. It's also the people you care the most about in your life. It's your family, it's your friends, it's the people who look like you, it's the people who raised you. And so I think it's a challenge, because from a leadership perspective, if people are looking up to us for what to do, they're also looking up to us for how to feel. And if many of us don't know how to deal with the emotions that we're feeling, we are passing these emotions on to them. We're passing our fear to them. We're passing our anger to them. We're passing our sadness to them. We're passing our hatred to them, our indifference and apathy. What would it be like if we learned how to process these emotions and lead with the emotions we want to see in the world? And so I'll talk about one tool that has helped me a lot. So, well, two tools. First, I built an app for emotional self-reflection. The idea was, if I could have a private space on my phone where I could ask myself, how do I feel? And be really, really honest. Because when other people ask me, the cultural aspects, as Peter was talking about, come into play. Is it culturally acceptable to say that I'm angry? In AIESEC, how are you doing? Excellent. Can I say angry? Not really. Maybe, depending on the context and who's in the room. And, you know, if I'm in a professional workplace, am I honestly allowed to say that I'm feeling horny? Very few workplaces, right? No. But I mean, these are natural things that happen. As a leader, how often am I allowed to say that I feel uncertain? I don't know the answer. Or ashamed. So I built this app. I was working on it for a while, and I think over the course of a few years, I entered probably 4,000 different times. Answered, how do I feel? What's happening? 140 characters, boom. And what I realized is I didn't want to work on an app. I quit engineering for multiple reasons, right? And so I shifted to something that was more to me. I was taking a martial art called Krav Maga at the time, and I really loved the idea of how do we resolve conflict in a very tangible, physical way. And what I was seeing is that in most martial arts, when you get to the top, you get to become a master black belt or 6th-degree black belt, you learn that the whole point of fighting is to not fight. How do you resolve it earlier on, as early as you can? Aha! So what if I took the practicality of Krav Maga and I took my love for running classes and dealing with emotions and came up with something called emotional self-defense? So how do I learn how to respond to emotional attacks? With love. How do I take it and flip it around so when somebody shows hatred towards me or somebody ignores me, I respond to them in a very kind and honest, loving way. Not just, oh, pretending like I'm not feeling it, but being very open with my emotions, but at the same time, ending up feeling connected to that person. And so something that was really important for me were these 3 steps. Step 1, truth. Step 2, fair play. And step 3, love. So step 1 was about telling the truth about how I was actually feeling in the moment. Not how I was supposed to be feeling. And what I realized is when I wouldn't do this step, most people wouldn't listen to the rest of the things I would say to them anyways. For example, if they, practicing rejection, a scenario of rejection. If the person rejects me and I respond, oh, okay, you know, it's really good to see you. No, 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 no. No. You feel hurt, I feel hurt, but I'm not saying it, the other person knows it. So, and then step 2 is about fair play. So it's to jump out of my experience and to tell the other person how I imagine they might be feeling. Imagine they might be feeling. Not, I know you're angry, I know you're this, but I don't know. There's an underlying uncertainty to what the other person is feeling. And then step 3 was about love. To say one thing to connect with love. Thank you, I'm sorry, good luck, I appreciate you. And I'll tell another story and how that's changed how I respond to some of these situations. So, after living in California for a couple years, I moved back to Michigan. I was living with my parents. And as a 32-year-old man at the time, I'm 33 now, that was a bit rough. And it was snowing. I wasn't used to the snow. And it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I was talking to my parents in the kitchen about a new idea I had, a new framework. I'm stuck in my head. And the framework is this. People are either fighters or people are lovers. Some people like really fight, and some people are like overly loving or overly fighting. I was like, okay, got this framework, and I talked to my parents. And I was talking to my parents, and then I said, okay, some people are fighters and some people are lovers. And then my mom says, oh, I'm the loving one or something. And then I responded, Mom, you're not very loving. And when I said it, I kind of felt my body go, And I saw for a split second that she went and kind of turned away near the fridge. And so then the conversation continued. I went to the living room. I was talking with my dad, and everything went on for a few minutes. And then she's washing dishes in the kitchen, and she says, the problem with the millennials these days is that you always do this, you always do that, you feel entitled, blah, blah, blah. Ooh, I got pissed. Why'd you talk about these millennials? So I said, wait, do you mean me as a millennial? Am I a millennial? She says, yeah, you millennials, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking. And so I was stewing. And my normal Michigan response was to be passive-aggressive and just snap back at her, right? And so luckily I had to go outside and shovel the snow. Went outside and shoveled the snow, and while I was out there I realized, oh my God, what did I say to my mom? I said, you're not that loving? Oh. And so my father and I were going to an event at the police station about Martin Luther King later, and my mom had rejected the invitation earlier. And so I went back in, and I said, okay, I need to apologize to my mom. I need to apologize. And I'm terrified to apologize, because how do I do this? So I went up to her, caught her in the kitchen, and I used these 3 steps. And I said, Mom, listen, I've been feeling really guilty about something I said earlier. I said that you're not that loving. And I didn't mean it. You have been, you have been so supportive of me over the last couple months, in years, it's been incredible. And I can't imagine how much that must have hurt coming from your son. And so, I'm sorry, Mom. Thank you so much for supporting me the way you have. I don't know where I'd be without you. And, she kind of looked away, and then she looked up at me with tears in my eyes, have fun, just gave me a big hug. And I tell this story because imagine what a different world we would have if we could respond to situations like this. If the medical doctors that Melanie was talking about recognize that they're afraid of the patients who are coming in and know how to communicate that to them and still respond and treat them with love. if the if the students in Cairo who are seeing sad and angry on there have learned from their parents and their leaders that it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel angry. If it's okay to feel horny, talking about sexuality, and it's okay to feel tender and other emotions that are not very allowed in a lot of places. And so I think as leaders, we have a responsibility to create the culture that allows all of the emotions to be felt. Because when we don't, they come out in many other ways. And what kind of world could we have if we fulfill the peace and humankind potential by paying attention to our emotions? Just got a few minutes here, and I want to tell one last story. And I was reading a electrical engineering blog called TechCrunch. It's kind of like startup engineering blog. And there was a post about a guy who was trying to create peace and love in the world. And that's not the spot you would read about peace and love. I was like, what? And so I opened it up, and it was actually about this one gentleman who is known as one of the fathers of modern-day cryptography. So, runs banking and cryptocurrency and many of our transactions, WhatsApp and things like this. And he and his wife were writing a book about how to have more peace in the world. And he had also done work with nuclear nonproliferation. And I apologize, I don't know his name. His first name is Martin. I forget his last name, I think. And I sent them an email, and his wife responded within 20 minutes, scared the crap out of me. And she, yeah, I would love to talk on the phone. So we spoke later that day for about an hour on the phone. And she told me one of the main principles of the book was, if we want to have peace in the world, it starts with peace at home. And so I just want to end by saying, I'm really grateful for all of you hosting me this week, not just on the stage right here, but for letting me be me, giving me the permission to be me, and encouraging me to stand up here and do these things. I can't imagine how you're feeling when you heard a talk about emotional leadership, and you're probably exhausted like I am. And the last thing I want to say, which is step 3, if you haven't noticed, is kind of a song. I love you, AIESEC, I do. I love you, AIESEC, I do. I love you, AIESEC, I do. AIESEC, I love you. Thank you.